Welcome to the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. Hope you're having a wonderful week. It's almost draft time. A little over a week away. Thursday night is the first round of the NFL draft. But there's some other business going on with the Broncos. What's going on with Courtland Sutton? My man Parker Gabriel was up north on Saturday, had a chance to catch up with Sutton, give an update on that situation. And let's take a look at some of these factors that could go into the draft. There's other needs besides running back. We're not going to hit that today. We'll hit that next week as we approach that first round. But they got business with some certain contracts, including Courtland Sutton. We got some interesting top 30 visits. And what are some of their other needs? Some sneaky needs, if you will. And what is throwing the NFL draft for a loop that could affect a local star player here in our own backyard? We're going to get to all of that after the break. Have you been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work? What are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggatt Injury Law a call. Their motto, with us, it's personal. That's because it is. I've known Darby Hoggatt for years. We became good friends. Many of his clients become his good friends. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. Again, if you've been hurt in a car wreck or injured at work, give Darby's team a call. That's 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-HOGGAT. Or visit the website at hoggattlaw.com. Darby is fantastic. So if you have a chance and you're in the fortunate situation where you get hurt, please give Darby a call. He's my man. He's a huge, when I say huge, gigantic Broncos fan. Broncos country. So Broncos country, where are we at with Courtland Sutton? Before last year, you said, you wanted to praise but not pay Courtland Sutton. That is correct. If you read my columns at the Denver Post, a year ago around this time, I said that Courtland Sutton's contract at that time was fair. He had one good season as part of his contract. He had gone at one point 26 games with 2 touchdowns. Then the arrival of Russell Wilson. He becomes a red zone factor. Last year for Bo Nix, a red zone factor, piling up the touchdowns. And he was clearly Bo Nix's security blanket on third down. I mean, there's just no way around it. The guy that was second on targets on the team was Javonte Williams. And unfortunately, his yards after catch were terrible. Courtland Sutton on third down was critical to their offense, moving the chains, keeping them in position for field goals. I mean, he was a guy that they could trust. They could trust not only in the red zone, but just, again, clutch moments. And when you start talking about contested balls in terms of high leverage throws with a guy right on you, no one got more of those passes thrown to him than Courtland Sutton. Bo Nix looked to him. So no matter where you think his value is, because statistically, this idea he's a top 15 receiver, it doesn't really wash. But he is close in regards to when you talk about value to a specific team, value on third down, value in the red zone. So when I looked at it at the combine, it's very clear that he is now deserving of a contract extension. And I was the one who advocated, you can pick it up in the Denver Post and go Google it, for Garrett Bowles to get an extension. Because to go out and pay that in the free agency, you're going to overpay. You saw that with Mike McGlinchey. You pay A+ money for B players. That's what free agency is for the most part. Wisely, they got Bowles done, a 3-year deal with 2 years guaranteed. That's something I see similar for Sutton. He might have a little more leverage given he's a little younger than Bowles, and he's the second longest tenured Bronco, but he's a little younger. Could he get a Calvin Ridley deal, which was like 4-year, 92? Ridley had the leverage of true free agency. But, I mean, the idea that you could get him for 4-year, 90, and then essentially 2 years are guaranteed, I think that's reasonable. So where does it stand? We've kind of set these parameters with Sutton. They obviously need him. Bo Nix 100% needs him if he's going to continue his ascent in his sophomore season. Sean Payton appreciates Sutton as a leader, as a guy who's tough, who doesn't miss time, sets a good example. I think Sutton last year, more than any year I've covered him, took his leadership role, that responsibility greater, not only in terms of the locker room and practice, but the way he dealt with the media was much improved. And just understanding that when you're at that podium, you're speaking to the fans. It's not necessarily the media. You're speaking and conveying a message to Broncos country. And I think more than any year before, he seemed to understand that. But where do we stand with Sutton? Well, again, my good friend Parker Gabriel of the Denver Post, you got to read his work. He and Luca Evans are just crushing it leading up to the draft in the denverpost.com/sports Broncos. You can get all their stuff. But he was up at Shields, Courtland Sutton, doing a signing event for Sutton Sours. He loves sour candy, so that's something he and I have in common. If you guys know my Twitter bio from years ago, one of my hobbies was eating Chewy Sprees. Over the last month, I've chilled on the candy on Lemonheads and Chewy Sprees after a doctor appointment. So I got to chill out on some of my sours. But I love sour candy. He's got his own brand of sour candy. He's up at Shields. And Broncos typically don't make it up north. As you guys know, I live in Longmont, so I'm up north. They don't do a lot of events up here. And he had a great turnout. People buying the candy, getting autographs. Well, Parker Gabriel had a chance to talk to Sutton. And Sutton described the contract in positive terms, that moving in the right direction, that they understand his value. And that's a marked difference from this time a year ago. If you remember, he didn't go to the voluntary stuff a year ago as, you know, kind of it can't technically be a holdout because you don't have to be there, but he was sending a message to the team. I'm not happy with my contract. And basically they guaranteed him essentially about $1.5 million, $2 million. He hit a bunch of incentives to his credit, but they did not rework his contract. And they hadn't done it with anyone. And that's why the Bulls move for me was so significant. Someone in-house because since Russell Wilson, they hadn't redone a contract. They did that with Bulls and given him an extension. For me, that sets the groundwork for Sutton. Because Sutton last year, people were confused that he got a new contract. He didn't. He essentially just got new incentives he could trigger with play and a little bit more guaranteed money. And he did. He hit those. Another reason why he deserves a new contract. But he described it in terms of very, very positive. All the plans are for him to be at all the voluntary stuff coming up. That's a sign, obviously, that he believes, he and his representation, that things are moving forward. You know, again, when people ask you about the timeline, typically if you didn't get it done, you know, about 3 weeks before the draft, now everything in terms of contract extensions moves to post-draft. So I would not expect us to hear a Sutton announcement this week or next week. I mean, it could. It's just the teams prioritize the draft so much at this time. They're in their war room. They would rather give up bomb secrets on Signal than tell you what they're doing in those war rooms for a draft. I mean, and they're so protective of that. They're so laser focused. That attention is shifted. Once the draft's over, then you have to start focusing on these contract extensions. Courtland Sutton, Nick Bonito, Zach Allen. And I think for me, the easiest one to probably get done is Sutton. Because when you're talking about Zach Allen and Nick Bonito, those are guys you're going to want to set a market. You know, they're not looking to get just something done. They're top of the market, but they're both coming off all pro years. Sutton had a nice year as a nice player. Allen and Bonito were, you know, among the tops at their position in the entire league. Those are different contract negotiations because you typically have to go a little longer to spread that signing bonus out, and you're making a commitment that says this guy's part of our core for, you know, 3 more, 4 more years just because of the guaranteed money and the salary cap ramifications. But look for something to happen with Sutton. I would expect something to happen with Sutton this offseason. You know, we could go all the way into training camp, but I just don't think they want to do that. They've preached culture. They preach togetherness, like, you know, we're turning the corner here. Everything is pointing, all the arrows are pointing in the right direction. I just can't see them, specifically with Sutton, playing hardball, especially after last year. They kind of did him a solid. He did them a solid by coming back, and he met their expectations. So it's something to keep an eye on. But again, Courtland Sutton, you can read it in the Denver Post. He was up there doing an event. Sutton Sours is the name of the candy if you want to look that up online. It's a Colorado company he is paired with. But he believes that they understand his value, and based on the early talks, that things are moving in the right direction. So that's a good sign, Broncos fans. That is a good sign. But what if they have someone join him? This is an interesting thing because we love mock drafts, sort of. I wrote in the Denver Post a few weeks ago that everyone should be limited to like 2 mock drafts. I mean, because at some point you're just mocking us with your mock drafts. It's one of my favorite lines. I was listening, I think it was JT the Brick. I think he's been doing it 30 years now, so congratulations to JT. But it might have been a different show, but it was definitely a national show. It was when Mayock was the general manager, Mike Mayock was the general manager of the Raiders, and a caller called in and said, because Mayock had done a lot of work with NFL Network on their draft day coverage for years, and this caller called in and said, I wish Mayock could go back to doing mock drafts instead of mocking us with his real drafts. Because the Raiders had some atrocious drafts. I think it was the 2 years he was there. And some of it, he and John Gruden in a power struggle, whatever. But I always thought of that line when, yeah, mocks can be a little exhausting at some point. A little exhausting. And I think you should be limited to two. That is, an early one and then one like right around this time now. But some of the mocks are popping up without the Broncos taking running back. Obviously, that is the most popular choice, is the Broncos. If it were kind of to go chalk, they would get North Carolina running back Omarion Hampton at 20. I don't think they'll have any chance at Ashton Genty. It just does. I don't see it. But if Hampton goes like 12 to the Cowboys, we're starting to see some mocks at receiver. And I bring that up because, Luca Evans for the Denver Post is keeping a tracker on top 30 visits. Texas receiver Golden visited the Broncos recently, a top 30. He's a guy that's been connected to some teams first, or, middle first, early second. And then Luther Bolden Jr., the third from Missouri is another name, and even the kid from Arizona. So you're seeing 2 to 3 receivers pop up for the Broncos. I cannot see them taking a receiver in the first round. It's really kind of against Sean Payton's DNA, but it does make me feel like they could take one in the second. Just the way they're poking around at that position to add. And, Sean Payton has a type. Like when people ask about Tez, Bo Nix's kind of pseudo brother that they've taken into the family. I mean, he weighs 150 pounds. And he's like 5'10", 150 pounds. They already have a guy like that in Marvin Mims. Every receiver on their roster is essentially 6'2", 205, 6'3", 210. Like Sean Payton likes a specific receiver. They look like a basketball team with wing players. They have one point guard type size, and that would be Mims. So I don't know that they would go small at that position. But, again, it's a huge season for Devon Vele and Troy Franklin to make progress. And I do think it's very clear they're going to push them. It's very clear whether it's later in the draft or undrafted free agent, they're going to bring in guys to push them, as they should. Both of them had flashes, Vele more than Franklin, but you can't assume linear growth with young players. I mean, look no further than the Rockies, that absolute tire fire they got going on. You can't assume linear growth, because if you do, you usually get burned. You have to have safety nets in place that if a guy's not doing it, are you challenging him in practice? Do you have somebody that can replace him? I mean, sometimes the best way to send a message to a player is that you have him sit on the bench and it doesn't go through his mind. It goes through, you send it through his backside that, hey, you're not getting it done. We're going to take playing time away. That's the one thing you can do, is take playing time away to send a message. And if you have that, sometimes that competition forces the best in people, and you find out, man, this guy wants it. He understands. That's part of my issue when I complain about the Rockies. You can follow my Twitter feed. I mean, if they don't start firing somebody soon, starting with the hitting instructor. And again, if you want to tell me Bud Black's not cast for this job, I agree. He's not either. They need a younger manager, I think, to develop this youth movement that everything's about developing young players, not playing the Nick Martinis and Kyle Farmers of the world, but they have to, because their young players have been so bad that they're worried about getting no hit every night. That's my tangent. But when you're trying to send a message to young players, you need competition. In the NFL, it's easy because you can cut guys. You can cut them, and you can send a message that's so resounding that your career's in jeopardy. But receivers becoming a position, just keep an eye on that. That's a position that, is it a position of an absolute must-have? No, it's not. Because you have Courtland Sutton, Vele, Franklin, Marvin Mims. And Mims's role was so significant the last month of the season. It doesn't scream that you have to get someone, but they could use another guy. And again, people talked about Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel. That was never going to happen. It was never, because of the money, the years, the age. That wasn't it. But could they get a receiver in this draft that could challenge for playing time as a rookie? 100%. That's why keep an eye on those top 30 visits. Again, we have a tracker at the Denver Post regarding that. But keep an eye on that, because it becomes real significant in the second, third round. And again, I was talking to my good friend Andrew Mason about this first round, that if they go tight end, Colston Loveland in the first round, does that mean Travion Henderson in the second at 51? Or what about they trade back to a team, if the quarterback situation, somebody's falling, they trade back to get a second rounder. So you draft 28th, and now you pick up 2 second rounders. Not the worst thing, honestly. This isn't the best draft. It's a really good draft for depth, quality, but it's light on star power, frankly, because the quarterback class is not nearly as sexy as what we're used to coming out of college. But for the Broncos, there's going to just be a lot of permeations of tight end, running back in those first couple rounds. And if you go running back, do you go Mason Taylor in the second round? The tight end from LSU, Jason Taylor's son. If you go, but is Travion Henderson too rich to go in the first round? I think there's an argument for that. Quinshon Judkins, I like him a lot, but is he a 3-down back? Is Travion Henderson a 3-down back? People that watch Ohio State will tell you they see him more as a guy that needs to be in a 2-back system. So what does that mean for other backs there for the Broncos? A couple of them are going to make it. Jaleel probably makes it, and I would think Estime after that. I don't know. I mean, but maybe Tyler Beatty comes in and has an amazing camp, and they feel like Estime is the guy to move out. But keep an eye on receiver as a sneaky pick somewhere in those top 3 rounds. Just the way the draft's falling, I just cannot see it in the first round right now. I've been stunned before. It's just not in Sean Payton's DNA. He feels like he can develop receivers. He has a history of doing that. He does not have a history of going receiver early, especially, again, given this team's needs to add at tight end, even with Evan Ingram, and certainly they've got to get a running back. We all know they're getting a running back. It's just a matter of when. Is that in the first or second round? And maybe they end up getting 2. But where does that come in? And that brings up the other needs as you get into this and piece this puzzle together. Again, Parker Gabriel's been doing a series on positional needs, and this is a draft, too, where they need to probably land a tackle. They have drafted a tackle since Garrett Bowles, which is insane. But look for a tackle. Ben Powers, Mike McGlinchey, those contracts are coming up. Center, are you really going to pay Wattenberg big money, given the money that's outlaid already to Bowles and Powers and McGlinchey and Miners? So could they try to get a center in the later rounds of this draft? Absolutely. Again, that's part of, you look at your roster, what does it look like in 25, 26, 27? I don't see a situation where a guy like Wattenberg, no matter how he plays, gets paid. It's why they let Cushenberry go. They weren't going to pay Cushenberry, especially it sounds like at that time they had eyes to keep Bowles. Excuse me. They had eyes on keeping Bowles, so you can't have all 5 offensive linemen making real money. It just doesn't work. So keep an eye on center there, and then defensive line. Defensive line, because John Franklin Myers, we're not sure what's going to go on with him. Is he going to get a new contract? Where's his situation going to land? Are they going to pay, which I expect, Zach Allen big money? But they need to add depth there. I mean, you keep DJ Jones, which was fantastic in terms of your rush defense. But keep an eye on defensive line, too, that is something that could be a depth thing, or the way it falls. Heck, the kid Harmon from Oregon in the first round, it wouldn't be the worst pick if you look at just value. It would be kind of a buzzkill for fans because we want positional players, offensive players, but Harmon is a guy that certainly would fit what they do defensively. So that's another position to keep an eye on. But the good news is the Broncos are in a good position. We were sitting here a year ago saying, like, man, if they don't nail this thing at quarterback, they're just going to be in an awful position in the AFC West, never challenge, never compete. And to Sean Payton's credit, he admitted that. Most coaches won't. That basically your entire organization is seen through the eyes of that position. And if you're not confident at that position, it is really, really hard to have confidence in your team, in your ability to win on the road. And all those things last year were kind of answered and created this, for me, the floor of 10 wins. That's where the floor is. But there is a situation going on with a quarterback that I've compared a little bit to Bo Nix in this draft, and that is Shedeur Sanders. There's two things going on as of Tuesday morning. One is the controversy that the CU announced yesterday that at their spring game on Saturday, they're going to retire the jersey numbers of Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. Listen, I'm a CU grad. I was there from 89 to 93. I covered for the Colorado Daily and KUCB Radio the greatest 4-year run of CU football ever, which included the 1990 co-national championship with Georgia Tech. Travis Hunter getting his number retired, I have no issue with. He is the unicorn, a guy you would make an exception for. Not unlike John Elway, Broncos country. They retired his number in a Monday night game, the first game after he had retired the following season, Monday night against the Dolphins, playing Rebel Yell by Billy Idol. He comes out, they retired his number, Ring of Fame, all of that. Because he's the unicorn. There's the Mount Rushmore of the Broncos is John Elway and everybody else. Travis Hunter, as the school's only second Heisman Trophy winner, certainly belongs in that conversation. But Rashaan Salam had to wait, I believe, 13 years, if memory serves. But if you want to say he's the unicorn, he could be the best player that CU's ever had, we want to retire his jersey while he's still around, okay. I'm not going to push back on that. Shedeur Sanders, I like him. I've written positive articles about him. You can find those at the Denver Post, both when Travis Hunter was up for the Heisman, during Shedeur's season. Shedeur Sanders should not be getting his number retired 2 months after his last game. I mean, I think his record was 13-11, 13-12. They lost the bowl game. Did he help put CU football back on the map? Absolutely. Did he have 2 amazing years? 100%. Is he more worthy as a quarterback than Darian Hagan? I'd say no. Is he more worthy than Cordell Stewart? Nope. Hell, if you're going just on stats, Joel Klatt would have an argument to have his number retired. But for me, it's disrespectful to act as if CU football's history started when Deion Sanders arrived. It didn't. I'm here to tell you, open up the history book, Google search, Google it. Look at their record from 89 to 93, 89 really to 2003, but certainly 89 through 96. How many of those players were drafted? How many of those players were unbelievable players in the NFL, from Joel Steed to Greg Beaker to Ted Johnson, Charles Johnson, the receiver, Michael Westbrook. And frankly, the best number 2 is Deion Figures. Figures was voted the best cornerback in the country. He was an All-American. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. How could you retire Sanders number 2 before Deion Figures, when Figures is in the College Football Hall of Fame? That's my point here. We can't pretend CU football history began with the arrival of Deion Sanders. It didn't. The program felt dead. We all can agree with that. It had flatlined under Carl Durrell. But that doesn't mean the history in the 1970s with the Cliff Branches of the world didn't exist. Come on now. And so there's going to be pushback for that, and as there should. And I feel badly because it really has nothing to do with Shedeur. I can't imagine he was stumping to get his jersey retired. Hunter, again, different story. You want to retire Hunter's jersey? No real pushback. I still would have waited. Every Hall of Fame I've ever voted for, there's a reason they have a 5-year waiting period, because otherwise you have recency bias. Oh, this guy's the greatest. We got to get him in. You allow time to pass to give you perspective of where these stats really land. What was that contribution? How does it relate in context with everyone else at the position, at the school in this case? And again, if you're going to retire Sanders' number, then Deion Figures should be on there as well, his number 2. So there should be 2 number 2s. And secondly, you got to retire Darian Hagan. Cordell Stewart's a little tougher, but Hagan is not. Hagan changed their offense, changed their program. 89-90. He was hurt during the Rose Bowl, the one they won that got him the co-national championship. They don't win a national championship. They don't return to prominence at that level without Darian Hagan. And I was at those games, and I can tell you it was absolutely electric. It was different because it was the option. But I will push back here. I will push back. And it's not protect anyone's legacy. It's just there should be a specific thing in place on how numbers are retired, just like there is for Ring of Fame for the Broncos. And if you're going to make an exception to the rules and the waiting period, that person has to be someone of Travis Hunter's ilk. That you say that, yeah, he might be the greatest player in the history of the school. And no one really argues. Nobody is saying that about Shedeur Sanders. And it doesn't mean he didn't have 2 amazing years. He did, statistically and otherwise. But just putting CU football on the map, that doesn't, I mean, in that case, Salinesi helped put CU football on the map in his 1 year starting as they turned it around under Bill McCartney. I mean, it just opens it up to so many other players that made significant contributions to turn the program around under Bill McCartney. And so I'm not a fan. But that's the reason I bring up Shedeur. That's number one, that story, which came out late yesterday. And number two, apparently Derek Carr has some major shoulder issue, and now the Saints at 9 need a quarterback. But if you look at the odds, it is almost crazy how even the odds are that Jackson Dart could be selected before Shedeur Sanders. That I will push back. I watched Jackson Dart. I don't see him as better than Shedeur Sanders. I know Shedeur Sanders, the issues are, again, did he make choices to get sacked by playing hero ball? Can they coach that out of him? But the reality is he's accurate, he's smart, he understands how to essentially dissect the defense, which is most of what it comes down to being a pro football quarterback. Do you know what you see? Can you do it quickly? Can you turn it around quickly? And so keep an eye on that. If Shedeur Sanders doesn't go 9, the Steelers are very interested in Shedeur Sanders. Would they move up because they're in the 20s? Would they move up to 15 or 16 somewhere just to ensure they get him? Or maybe they sit pat and take Jackson Dart. But the one thing I didn't like about Shedeur is this retiring jersey thing on Saturday. I don't like it. I mean, very clear that I don't. And it's nothing against the player. It's just there should be a process in place and guardrails to prevent this. Number two, I love the idea that he could end up with the Saints with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore is a known offensive coach who's done really good work with Dak Prescott. Obviously, he did great work last year with Jalen Hurts, winning the Super Bowl with the Eagles. This is a guy that I think would be a great fit, not unlike Bo Nix with Sean Payton. If Shedeur were to go to the Saints, that's a better fit than go to the Giants or Browns. Because I think Travis Hunter goes 2 to the Browns, and that if Shedeur goes 9, that's amazing for both of them. But it doesn't mean both need their jerseys retired. So, folks, the draft is almost here. It's next Thursday night is the first round. Then round 2 and 3 are on Friday, and they finish out the draft on Saturday. It's an important draft. If the Broncos make the right decisions, especially with their running back, they could pass the Chiefs. That's how important of a draft it is. So I know you all be watching. I can't thank you enough for the support, Broncos country, as we get closer to one of the favorite times of the year, the NFL draft. Again, this podcast would not be possible without my great friends at Hoggatt Injury Law, Darby Hoggatt, A1 from day one, and of course, Nate Lundy and then Danny Bailey behind the screen from Mile High Sports. They make this podcast happen and the wonderful graphics. I could not do it without them. Broncos country, I do this podcast for you. Happiness, that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.